Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The red velvet and gold trim of the Lucky Diamond Casino had lost its glamour for me long ago. What once seemed like a palace of possibilities now felt like an ornate prison where I shuffled cards and dreams in equal measure. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the green felt tables, and the constant ding of slot machines provided a soundtrack to my slowly dying spirit. Table 7 needs fresh cards, my supervisor Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the casino's ambient noise like a blade through silk. I nodded, gathering a new deck and walking across the burgundy carpet that had seen more broken dreams than fulfilled ones. As I approached the high-stakes poker table, I could feel Jerry's eyes on me from across the room where he worked security. Even from 50 feet away, his disapproval radiated like heat from a furnace. We'd fought again that morning. The same fight we'd been having for months, with slight variations but always the same cruel crescendo. "Look at yourself, Sophia." He'd smeared over his instant coffee, his security uniform already pressed and ready. 25 years old and still dealing cards for tips. When are you going to get a real job? When are you going to contribute something meaningful to this relationship? I'd wanted to remind him that my dealer's salary helped pay for the apartment he insisted we share. That my tips bought groceries while he spent his paycheck on beer and sports betting. That Jerry's words had a way of making me forget my own worth, of making me question whether I deserved better than his conditional love. "You're lucky I put up with this," he'd continued, straightening his tie with the self-importance of someone who believed carrying a flashlight and wearing a badge made him important. "Most guys wouldn't date a casino rat. But I see potential. In you, baby. You just need to stop being so pathetic." The word had followed me to work like a shadow, whispering in my ear every time I dealt a hand, every time I smiled at a customer, every time I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Pathetic, broke, loser. But as I reached table 7 and began shuffling the fresh deck, something extraordinary happened. "New dealer," a voice said, smooth and rich like aged whiskey. I like that. Fresh energy, fresh look. I looked up into the most striking pair of green eyes I'd ever seen. The woman sitting in the dealer's left was probably in her early 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, and wearing a black blazer that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Her smile was confident without being arrogant, warm without being false. "I'm Beatrice," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Beatrice Chun." "Sophia," I replied, shaking her hand and trying not to notice how soft her skin felt against my work-rough fingers. "Welcome to table 7. Thank you, Sophia." The way she said my name made it sound like something precious instead of something ordinary. "I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting evening." As I dealt the first hand, I could feel Beatrice watching me with an intensity that was both thrilling and unnerving. Not the predatory attention I was used to from male customers, but something different. Something that made me stand a little straighter, deal with a little more confidence. "Beautiful hands," she commented casually as I slid her cards across the felt. "Steady, graceful. You make this look like art." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. When was the last time someone had complimented my work? When was the last time someone had noticed anything about me besides what I lacked? "Thank you," I murmured, continuing the deal around the table. The other players were typical high-stakes types, businessmen in expensive suits, a few tourists playing with house money, an older woman dripping in diamonds who treated poker like a social event. But Beatrice commanded the table without saying much, her presence both relaxed and formidable. As the evening progressed, I found myself looking forward to dealing her cards, to the brief moments when our fingers would brush during the exchange. She played with a confidence I envied, making bold moves that paid off more often than not. When she won a particularly large pot, she slipped me $100 tip with a smile that made my knees weak. "For the artist," she said with a wink. From across the casino, I could see Jerry's scowl deepening. He'd probably have something to say about that tip when my shift ended. Something about how I was probably leading customers on, how I was embarrassing him, how a decent girlfriend wouldn't accept such generous tips from strangers. But for the first time in months, I found myself not caring what Jerry thought. Beatrice became a regular at my table over the next few weeks. She always requested table 7, always tipped generously, and always treated me like I was more than just part of the casino furniture. Our conversations were brief. Casino protocol didn't allow for much personal interaction, but they were the highlight of my shifts. How long have you been dealing? She asked one Tuesday evening during a quiet moment between hands. 3 years, I replied, shuffling mechanically. Started right after high school. Do you enjoy it? The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had asked me if I enjoyed anything? Jerry certainly never did. To him, jobs were about necessity, not passion. Yes, actually. I like the strategy, the psychology of reading players. There's an art to it that most people don't see. Beatrice smiled, and it felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I can tell you have a gift for reading people. It's rare. That night, Jerry was waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning against his beat-up Honda with his arms crossed. We need to talk, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. I knew that tone. It meant I was in trouble for something, though I wasn't sure what yet. The redhead, he continued as we drove home through the neon-lit streets. The one who's been throwing money at you. What's her deal? She's just a customer, Jerry, a good tipper. Nobody tips that well without wanting something in return. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. What is she, some kind of lesbian trying to turn you? The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach turn. That's disgusting, Jerry. And even if she was what? He pulled into our apartment complex parking lot with more force than necessary. You'd be interested? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying it doesn't matter what her orientation is. She's a customer who treats me with respect. Respect. Jerry laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sophia, baby, you're so naive. Women like that don't respect women like you. They see you as a project, something to play with until they get bored. His words stung because they echoed my own insecurities. What would someone like Beatrice want with someone like me? I was just a casino dealer with a high school education and a boyfriend who reminded me daily of my shortcomings. But even as doubt crept in, I remembered the way Beatrice looked at me. Not like a project or a toy, but like a person worth knowing. The shift that changed everything started like any other Wednesday night. The casino was moderately busy, the air thick with cigarette smoke and desperate hope. I was dealing to a table of regulars when Beatrice arrived, but something was different about her demeanor. She looked tired, almost vulnerable, which was a stark contrast to her usual confidence. Rough day? I asked quietly as I dealt her opening hand. You could say that. She studied her cards without her usual enthusiasm. Sometimes the corporate world feels like its own kind of casino. Everyone's gambling, but the house always wins. What kind of work do you do? I'd been curious for weeks, but had never found the right moment to ask. Business consulting. Helping companies navigate difficult transitions. She placed her bet with less conviction than usual, not always as rewarding as it sounds. As the evening progressed, Beatrice's play became increasingly erratic. She was making rookie mistakes, betting emotionally instead. Strategically. During a brief break between hands, she looked up at me with those green eyes I'd come to know so well. Sophia, can I ask you something personal? I nodded, glancing around to make sure my supervisor wasn't watching. Are you happy? I mean, really happy? The question hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time I'd asked myself that? When? Was the last time happiness had even been a consideration in my life? That's complicated, I said finally. It shouldn't be. Her voice was soft but firm. Life's too short to settle for complicated when you could have simple joy. Before I could respond, Jerry appeared at the edge of the table like a storm cloud. Sophia, he said, his security badge gleaming under the lights. We need to talk. Now, I could feel the other players' attention shifting to us, could see the curiosity and discomfort in their faces. This was exactly the kind of scene Jerry loved to create, public displays of ownership disguised as concern. I'm working, Jerry. Marcus said he could cover your table. Come on. It wasn't a request. In Jerry's world, it never was. Beatrice's eyes followed our exchange with keen interest. When Jerry turned to head toward the back offices, she caught my hand gently. You don't have to go if you don't want to, she said quietly. You have choices, Sophia, more than you think. The simple statement hit me like lightning. Choices. When had I stopped believing I had them? But Jerry was already walking away, expecting me to follow like a well-trained dog. And despite Beatrice's words, despite the newfound spark of rebellion in my chest, I found myself apologizing to the table and trailing after him. The conversation that followed was a masterclass in manipulation disguised as love. That woman is bad news, Jerry said once we were alone in the empty break room. I've been watching her and something's not right. What do you mean? She's too interested in you, Sophia. Too generous. Women like that don't notice women like you unless they want something. There it was again, the casual dismissal of my worth, wrapped in protective concern. Maybe she's just a nice person, I suggested weakly. Nice people don't throw money around like that. She's either running some kind of scam, or she's trying to turn you into something you're not. Jerry moved closer, his voice dropping to the intimate tone he used when he wanted to sound caring instead of controlling. Baby, I love you. I'm trying to protect you from making a mistake that could ruin both our lives. What kind of mistake? The kind where you start thinking you're something special because some rich lady noticed you. His hands found my shoulders, squeezing just hard enough to remind me of his strength. You're my girlfriend, Sophia. My responsibility. I won't let anyone hurt you or confuse you about who you really are. The words should have felt protective. Instead, they felt like chains. I avoided Beatrice's table for the next week, picking up extra shifts on the other side of the casino where the stakes were lower and the tips were smaller. But I could feel her presence anyway, could sense when she was in the building, even when I couldn't see her. Jerry seemed pleased with my newfound distance from table 7, even going so far as to compliment my good sense over dinner one night. But his approval felt hollow, like praise for betraying myself. On the following Wednesday, Marcus approached me during my break with a request. High roller at table 7 specifically asked for you, he said, checking his clipboard. Said she'd wait until your break was over. My heart hammered against my ribs. Did she say why? Rich customers don't explain themselves to middle management, Marcus replied with a shrug. They just tip well enough that we listen. When I returned to table 7, Beatrice was alone, dealing cards to herself in an absent pattern. She looked up when I approached, and her smile was both relieved and concerned. I was starting to think you were avoiding me, she said. New rotation schedule? I lied, beginning to shuffle the deck with hands that trembled slightly. Sophia. Her voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. I met her eyes reluctantly and immediately wished I hadn't. She saw through my lie as easily as she read poker tells. He told you to stay away from me, didn't he? The directness of the question left me speechless. How did she know? How could she read the situation so clearly when I'd been trying so? Hard to hide it? I don't know what you mean. Your boyfriend, the security guard who watches you like a hawk. He warned you about me? I wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I focused on dealing practice hands to no one, the cards sliding across the felt in perfect formation. What did he tell you? Beatrice pressed gently. That people like you don't notice people like me unless they want something. I whispered, the admission feeling like a betrayal of myself. Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. And what do you think I want, Sophia? I don't know. I want to see you smile. Really smile, not the customer service in the smile you wear like armor. I want to hear you laugh. I want to know what you dream about when you're not dealing cards and being told you're not enough. She leaned forward slightly. I want you to remember that you're extraordinary, not because of what you do or how much money you make, but because of who you are. Tears stung my eyes. When was the last time someone had seen me as extraordinary? When was the last time I'd seen myself that way? Beatrice, I can't. You can. She stood up from her chair and walked around the table until she was standing beside me. Sophia, may I show you something? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. Not her own, but something else. A program for a women's empowerment seminar, expensive-looking paper with elegant typography. I bought a ticket for this, she said. It's this Saturday. Workshops on financial independence, career development, self-advocacy. I was hoping ... would you come with me? The invitation was so unexpected, so thoughtful, that it took my breath away. I couldn't afford. It's my treat. Call it an investment in someone I believe in. Before I could respond, before I could talk myself out of it, before Jerry's voice in my head could convince me I didn't deserve such kindness, I found myself nodding. Yes, I whispered, I'd like that. Beatrice's smile was radiant. Without thinking, without considering the consequences, she leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. The contact lasted only a second, but it sent electricity through my entire body. Saturday at 10, she said. I'll pick you up. As she walked away, I touched my cheek where her lips had been and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The women's empowerment seminar was held in a gleaming conference center downtown, the kind of place I'd driven past hundreds of times but never imagined entering. Beatrice picked me up in a sleek black Mercedes, and I felt simultaneously underdressed and overdressed in the nicest outfit. I owned a simple navy dress that Jerry had once called trying too hard. "You look beautiful," Beatrice said as I slid into the passenger seat, and I believed her because she had no reason to lie. The seminar was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Workshop after workshop focused on women recognizing their worth, setting boundaries, pursuing their dreams without apology. I found myself taking notes furiously, as if I could capture not just the information, but the feeling of possibility that filled the room. During lunch, as we sat in the conference center's elegant cafe, Beatrice watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I've been living in a very small world," I admitted. "These women, they're so confident, so sure of their worth. I don't know how to be like that." "You already are like that. You just need to remember it." Beatrice reached across the table and took my hand. "Sophia, there's something I need to tell you. Something about my past that you should know." The serious tone in her voice made my stomach flutter with anxiety. "What is it?" "Before I started my consulting business, I worked for some organizations that weren't aligned with my values. Companies that specifically targeted women's empowerment movements, trying to undermine them from within. My blood went cold. "What kind of companies?" "Corporate espionage firms, anti-feminist think tanks, groups that saw women's independence as a threat to traditional power structures." Her grip on my hand tightened. "I was good at what I did. Too good. I could infiltrate women's groups, identify leaders, create division and doubt." I pulled my hand away, the betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. "Are you is that what this is? Some kind of assignment?" "No." Her voice was firm, desperate. "Sophia, I left that world 2 years ago. I couldn't live with what I was doing anymore. The women I was targeting, the movements I was helping to destroy, they were fighting for things that mattered. Things I convinced myself didn't matter because it was easier than facing the truth." "What truth?" "That I was a woman working against women because it paid well and because it let me avoid confronting my own fears about love, about vulnerability, about being authentic." Tears gathered in her green eyes. "I was a coward, Sophia. But meeting you seeing your strength, your kindness, the way you light up when you talk about things you're passionate about it reminded me of everything I'd lost about myself." I stared at her across the cafe table, trying to process what she was telling me. This woman who seemed so confident, so sure of herself, had been just as lost as I was. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I care about you. Because I want to be honest about who I was, so I can be worthy of who I'm becoming." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "And because there's something else you need to know." "About Jerry." My heart stopped. "What about Jerry?" "He's been asking questions about me, digging into my background. I think he knows about my past, and I'm worried he might try to use it against both of us." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from Jerry. "Where are you? You said you were working an extra shift today." I stared at the message, realizing I'd lied to him about the seminar. Not because I thought he'd be angry about the event itself, but because I knew he'd be furious that Beatrice had invited me, that I'd said yes, that I was spending time with her outside the casino. "I have to go," I said, standing up abruptly. "Sophia, wait, I can't do this. I can't be part of whatever complicated situation this is turning into." I gathered my purse and notes from the seminar, my hands shaking. "Thank you for today. For the seminar, for the honesty. But I think it's better if we keep things professional from now on." I left her sitting in that cafe, and every step toward the exit felt like walking away from the person I could become toward the person I resigned myself to being. Jerry was waiting for me at our apartment, and I could tell from the set of his shoulders that the conversation was going to be ugly. "So," he said without looking up from his beer, "how was work?" The question was a trap, and we both knew it. "Fine," I said, hanging my purse by the door and trying to project normalcy. "Funny thing, I called the casino around 3. Marcus said you weren't on the schedule today." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. "I picked up a private party off the books." "Really? What kind of private party?" The lies were getting easier, which should have scared me, but instead felt almost liberating. Corporate event tips were good. Jerry finally looked at me, and his expression was cold calculation disguised as concern. Sophia, baby, come sit down. We need to have a talk. I remained standing, some instinct warning me not to make myself smaller by sitting while he loomed over me. I know where you were today, he continued. The Fairmont Conference Center. Some feminist bullshit seminar. The air left my lungs. In a rush. How did you? I have friends in security all over the city. It's amazing what they notice when you ask them to keep an eye out. His smile was cruel. I also know who you were with. Beatrice Chen, businesswoman with some very interesting connections. He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of screenshots, articles about corporate espionage, about firms that specialized in infiltrating women's rights organizations, about the murky world of companies that sold their services to the highest bidder. Your new friend isn't who she pretends to be, Jerry said, setting the phone on the coffee table like evidence in a trial. She's a professional manipulator, Sophia, and you're her latest target. I stared at the screen, seeing Beatrice's past laid out in stark black and white, but something about Jerry's presentation felt wrong, calculated. Where did you get this information? Does it matter? What matters is that she's been lying to you, using you. He stood up, moving closer with predatory confidence. I told you women like that don't notice women like you for good reasons. She told me about her past, I said quietly. Today, at the seminar, she was honest about what she used to do. Jerry's expression flickered with surprise before settling back into smug certainty. Oh, she told you? How convenient. Classic manipulation tactic. Reveal a carefully selected truth. To build trust before the real con begins. What would she be conning me for? I don't have money. I don't have influence. You have access. Jerry's voice turned harsh. Access to high-stakes gamblers, to wealthy clients, to information that could be valuable to the right people. You're the perfect inside source, and you're so desperate for attention that you can't see you're being used. The words hit like physical blows because they echoed my own insecurities. Was I really so pathetic that I'd fall for professional manipulation? Was my longing for connection so obvious that I'd become an easy target? But then I remembered Beatrice's tears in the cafe, the vulnerability in her voice when she talked about her past, the way she looked at me not like a mark, but like someone precious. I don't believe you, I said. Jerry's mask slipped completely. What did you just say? I said I don't believe you. The words came out stronger than I felt. Beatrice has never asked me for information about customers. She's never pushed me for anything except to believe in myself. She's playing a long game, Sophia. Building trust, making you feel special. Maybe I am special. The statement surprised us both. Maybe someone can see value in me without having an ulterior motive. Maybe the problem isn't that I'm too naive to see I'm being used. Maybe the problem is that you can't imagine someone treating me well without expecting something in return. Jerry's face darkened. Don't turn this around on me. I'm the one who's been here for 3 years. I'm the one who's stuck by you when any other guy would have moved on to someone with more potential. Potential for what? For being a real partner. For contributing something meaningful. For being someone I could be proud to introduce as my girlfriend instead of having to make excuses for. The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. 3 years of subtle put-downs, of being made to feel grateful for scraps of affection, of believing. I was lucky to be loved by someone who saw me as a project to be improved. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my apartment, now. Sophia, baby, you're being emotional. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. We're done. For a moment, Jerry looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression shifted to something uglier. You'll be back, he said, grabbing his jacket. When your lesbian fantasy falls apart and you realize what you've thrown away, you'll come crawling back. But I might not be available. I'm counting on it. After he left, I stood in my suddenly quiet apartment and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. I called Beatrice the next morning before I could lose my nerve. Sophia? Her voice was surprised, hopeful. Are you free for coffee? I think we need to talk. We met at a small cafe near the casino, neutral territory that felt less loaded than either of our usual spaces. Beatrice looked tired, like she'd spent the night worrying, and I realized that my abrupt departure yesterday had probably hurt her more than I'd intended. I broke up with Jerry, I said without preamble. Her eyes widened. Are you okay? I think so. Maybe. I don't know. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug for warmth. He knew about your past. Had screenshots, articles, evidence of everything. You used to do. Beatrice's face went pale. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I should have told you earlier, should have prepared you. He tried to convince me that you were running some kind of long con, that you were using me to get information about casino customers. I would never, I know. I met her eyes across the small table. That's what I told him. That's when the real fight started. Beatrice reached across the table tentatively, and I let her take my hand. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. For the first time in years, I have no idea what comes next. It's terrifying and exciting, and I paused, searching for the right word. Free, it feels free. What do you want to happen? The question was loaded with possibility. What did I want? For so long, my wants had been secondary to Jerry's expectations, to the casino's needs, to everyone else's definition of what my life should look like. I want to find out who I am when nobody's telling me who I should be, I said finally. I want to discover what I'm capable of when I'm not being reminded of my limitations. And us? Beatrice's voice was soft, vulnerable. Is there an us you'd like to explore? I thought about the electricity I felt every time she smiled at me. The way her attention made me feel valuable, worthy, seen. The kiss on my cheek that had awakened feelings I didn't know I possessed. Yes, I whispered, but I need to be honest about something. I've never been with a woman before. I don't know how to navigate this, how to be what you need. Sophia, Beatrice's grip on my hand tightened. I don't need you to be anything other than exactly who you are. We'll figure everything else out together. The promise in her voice made my chest tight with emotion. Together. When was the last time I'd been part of a real partnership instead of just playing a supporting role in someone else's story? There's something else, I continued. Jerry's not going to just disappear. He's going to try to cause problems for both of us. He has information about your past, and he's vindictive enough to use it. Let him try. Beatrice's voice was firm. I'm not ashamed of who I used to be because it led me to who I am now. And who I am now is someone who's falling in love with an incredible woman who deserves so much more than she's been given. The word love hung in the air between us like a bridge I was terrified to cross but desperate to explore. I think I'm falling in love with you too, I admitted, the words feeling both foreign and perfect on my tongue. Beatrice's smile was radiant. Then we'll face whatever comes next together. Jerry's revenge came faster than I expected. Within a week of our breakup, rumors began circulating around the casino. Whispers about my questionable relationships with female customers. Speculation about my professionalism and whether I could be trusted around high-value clients.